Hello everybody and welcome back. Halloween's around the corner. Dun, 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 dun. I'm going to show you how to make your own monster hands right here on the Evil Ted channel. I started off by making a silhouette of my finger using poster board as my pattern. Next, we're going to take some 10mm foam from TNT Cosplay Supply and glue them together using contact cement. Now the glue is dry, let's press them together. With my finger pattern, we're going to trace it onto the foam 10 times. A little bit of a tight fit, but I got them on there. Now let's take them over to the bandsaw and cut them out. Having a bandsaw in your shop really does upgrade your costume and prop building. All 10 fingers are cut out. We're going to take 2 of them and turn them into thumbs by cutting up 2 centimeters. We're going to take our rotary tool and a sanding drum. With the sanding drum, we're going to round off the edges over my downdraft table. Of course, the table really helps prevent the dust from going all over the shop. Using the edge of the sanding drum, we're going to carve in some wrinkles underneath the finger joints. On the back end of the fingers, I'm going to use the sanding drum to carve in some indentations on the end of the fingers. Doing this will make it easier to glue them onto the gloves. Now let's change our sanding drum over to a stone bit. The stone bit will help get rid of the groove lines from the sanding drum. Now the fingers are all smooth, we're going to heat seal them using the heat gun over my heat board. Now the fingers are all shaped up. We're going to glue them onto the spandex glove. To prevent contact cement from getting on my skin, I'm going to wear a pair of rubber gloves. Applying contact cement to the tip of the fingers and now onto the fingers themselves. You know, maybe I should have glued them on the fingers first before I put the gloves on. When attaching the fingers to the gloves, I like to start with the thumb first. Make sure you're putting on the fingers nice and straight from the top. Looking good. It's actually coming together. Our next step is we're going to stuff the hand. We're going to use 15mm foam dowels for the fingers. Now the fingers are filled, we're going to fill the rest of it with polyfiber fill. Make sure that they are nicely stuffed and fill the spandex glove as much as possible without deforming them. Okay, now both the gloves are filled. Now the next step is we're going to trace out the hands. So we're going to use a sheet of floor mat foam and some poster board. I'm going to take the left hand and place it on top of the poster board, spread the fingers apart, and pin them down with straight pins. Now trace it using a pencil or a ballpoint pen to get the perfect silhouette of the glove and fingers. What I'm making is a pattern for the foam skin to be placed around the glove. So I'm going to go back and add a little bit of extra on the sides for the fingers so there'll be enough material to wrap around them. Be sure to keep it flush to the tip of the fingers and in between the fingers. We're going to use both these areas as registration marks when gluing them together. Now that we're done modifying the pattern, let's go ahead and cut it out. I have some 16-inch thin upholstery foam. Now I'm going to trace the pattern using my 1, 2, 3 blocks. And now flipping it over for the right side. On the upholstery foam, we want to make sure the edges are beveled, so I find the easiest way to do that with the foam is take a pair of scissors and cut them at an angle. Take your time and cut them out slowly. The next step is we're going to apply some glue. We're going to be using spray 90. Before spraying, we're going to put down a piece of cardboard to keep the area clean. Now we're going to lay out the upholstery foam and make sure you leave on bevel side up. Now, get a good even coat of spray 90 on the edges. Moving on to the gloves, we're going to apply spray glue the same way. But to prevent the gloves from moving, we're going to pin them down with some straight pins. Now we're going to put them together, starting with the left hand. I find it's a lot easier to line up while the upholstery foam is still flat on the cardboard. To get them perfectly lined up, be sure to line up between the fingers right to the edge. And do the same with the fingertips. Now that they're in place, spray another coat of spray 90. Apply pressure to the edges and make good contact. Let's do the right hand. Now the upholstery foam is glued down. Double check the edges. If there's any spots that did not stick, go back in and use contact cement. The upholstery foam is now secured onto our gloves. We're going to take a Sharpie and draw in some wrinkles where the knuckles would be. And very lightly, using a wood burner, we're going to engrave the details. All the wood burning knuckle detail is done. We're going to move on to the claws. We're going to use some foam clay to make our claws. We're going to take some foam clay and roll it out nice and even. And we're going to cut them into 1-inch chunks. Doing this keeps the claws consistent in size and shape. I drew a claw shape onto a piece of styrene plastic. I'm going to use that as my template to help me shape out the claws. This really does help me keep them consistent in the same shape. Placing the claws on a piece of laminate I had in my shop, I'm going to take these guys outside so they can dry. While the claws are drying, we're going to take our gloves into the spray booth and put a layer of spray 77 on them. The spray 77 glue is dry. Our next step is to brush on some slip cast rubber. The spray glue will help prevent the latex from soaking into the foam so much. This helps make a thin rubber skin on our monster gloves. Our first coat will be applied on the upholstery parts first. You could let them air dry, but we can use a hair dryer to speed things up a bit. The first coat is dry, now let's apply the second coat of rubber. I find the second coat really helps cover up the texture of the foam, make it look more like skin. Okay, our first two coats are dry. Now we're going to flip the glove over and do the underneath of the palms, the gloves. We're going to add one thin coat of rubber latex. Being it's spandex, we don't need to put too much rubber on it. Well, the gloves are dry. Let's move on to the claws. Foam clay is a great product, but it does take some time for it to dry. These claws took about 2 days to dry. The next step is we're going to shape the claws using the original template. The next step, we're going to shape up the claws using our original template. I'm going to use a craft knife and cut off the bottoms. Now get the claws all shaped up. We're going to glue them onto the fingertips using contact cement. Now that the claws are all glued on, let's move on to painting. Today we're going to be using Plaid FX paints. I took some white and added a little bit of red to make pink, and then added a tad of yellow and brown for our flesh tone. And I thinned it down using some window cleaner so I can use my airbrush. Now that we have the base color under our hands, we're going to move on to some golden airbrush paint. I have some raw umber, thinned down a little bit with some alcohol. I'm adding a little bit of shading around the knuckles and the claws. To add more dimension to our flesh tone, we're going to turn down the pressure of our compressor and open up the airbrush really wide. This will cause a spattering technique. You gently just press on the top of it and spatter. I'm going to use a piece of poster board so you can see the splattering technique. I like this technique because it adds more depth and color to the hands, making them look more lifelike. Now we're going to use the same technique using some red airbrush paint. Our next step is we're going to paint the claws using Plaid FX paints, grounded and black carbon. I'm going to mix them together and make a dark brown. Now with some black paint and a thinner brush, we're going to add some streak details to the claws. The painting is all done. Let's go ahead and take the stuffing out and try these bad boys on. The gloves look good, but now that I have them on, I feel like the fingers could be slightly more bent underneath the knuckles. I should have done that when I glued them onto the gloves. I feel if I cut a wedge out behind the knuckles without cutting the upholstery foam on top, we should be all right. Let's apply some contact cement. Let it dry. Push them together. All right, this looks like it's going to work. Let's go ahead and do the rest of them. Yes, now that I have them on, they look a lot better. We were just missing that extra curve to the finger. I call these gloves done. And there they are, your own creepy monster hands. I have to admit, if I was to make these again, I would use some nice fitting work gloves, a little bit thicker, and overstuff them because using the spandex gloves were a bit tight and I didn't compensate for the shrinkage of latex, so they're a little bit tight. So if you go to make them, make sure you get some nice fitting work gloves. I think it'd work a lot better. If this is your first time watching my videos, don't forget to subscribe. And if you're new to cosplay, you should jump over to my website, eviltedsmith.com, where I have numerous patterns and also Amazon lists for shopping if you guys need a supply list. Also, everything I used on this video is listed below. I don't know what I'm gonna do with these things. They're fun, but you can't do anything once you have them on. This is a blast making, everybody. Thank you so much, and I want to wish everybody a happy Halloween. And if you do end up making your own gloves, please like the video, leave comments below, and tag me in all social media. If you Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, whatever you build your gloves on, be sure to tag me and I can see them. Thank you so much for watching, everybody, and I'll catch you back next time right here on the Evil Ted channel.